I'm so glad to be with you today. We are all grandmas, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about grandparenting in this, it's kind of a stressful time. I don't know about you, but I have a new granddaughter. She just turned 9 months old, and for 5 months, I wasn't able to hold her. And that was absolutely painful. I haven't babysat for her yet. I haven't had time alone with her yet. So let's start by saying how many grandchildren we each have. Deanne, how many do you have?
I'm a brand new grandparent. I have a 2-year-old, a 2-month-old, and one on the way.
Wow. Okay, and Patty, what about you?
I have one grandchild, and I'm such a new grandparent. I feel really weird saying I'm a grandma. She calls me Mamo, which is Gaelic for grandma. And her name is Bridget, and she's from my firstborn daughter, Megan, and my only daughter, my firstborn child. And Bridget is 22 months old. She's about to turn 2 in October.
What a magic age.
Oh.
And Tinker, what about you?
Well, no, I have 6 beautiful grandchildren.
And how old are
I
they?
have 2 12-year-old twins, Addie and Daisy, and I have a 7-year-old Jack, 6-year-old Gus, 3-year-old Iris, and 2 tomorrow, Maggie. And they're all delightful and amazing.
It's amazing, isn't it? Well, I have 5. I've got 2 14-year-olds. They're 30 days apart, boy and a girl, Andy and Dessa. And then I've got an 11-year-old Owen, and I've got an 8-year-old Jackson, and I've got Caden, who is 9 months old, and my daughter is about to adopt.
Oh.
So we should have 6 soon, which is really neat. And I've got to tell you, the teenagers are so much fun. I haven't found a stage yet that wasn't magical. How about you guys?
Yeah.
I didn't. I missed what I think is such a magical period. I wasn't able to see Bridget for 7.5 months because of COVID, because they lived far enough away that the travel was restricted. And I finally saw her last month and spent a month with them. I spent 2 weeks with them, and they spent 2 weeks with us. But I kept feeling like I missed all this magical time from like 18 months to 22 months. And yet the minute you're with them, all that time is made up. But and we have FaceTime. I don't know about y'all, but I hardly a day went by that we didn't even have a 30-second FaceTime. I kept joking that she thought I lived in the phone. So when she finally saw me in real life, it was like I'm a genie that came out of a bottle or something. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's a good way of putting it. How are you staying in touch, Tinker?
I'm very, very lucky that all of my children and therefore grandchildren live within driving distance, if not stone throwing distance. And but it's been difficult. I have a very fortunate to live in a house with many layers of terracing, and I have a swimming pool with steps that go up from there for different terraces. So they come over and maybe once a week I see at least one grandchild or one set of grandchildren in the pool, and I sit above. None of us have blended as a pod. So what I miss the most is the physical affection. I have to express myself. I have to express my physical affection verbally, and I do that consciously every time I see them. And I say things like, my heart is dancing because you're here, and I love you so much. And, you know, I kind of feel like a grandparent's job is to light up when their grandchildren come within a certain radius. And so I am very, very, very conscious of doing that. But boy, do I miss the smells and the hugs and the grabbing and smooching. And I try and tell them every time I see them, you just wait. When this COVID is over, I'm going to be wrestling you to the floor and kissing you all over. And they always giggle and laugh. So I keep connected. You know, FaceTime is good too. The 2-year-old, the little one, she has this look. She gets very close to the phone like this when I'm on the other side, like she's trying to figure out where exactly Grandma Dix is.
But I think staying in touch and letting them see you and hear you is so important. Deanne, how do you stay in touch?
We're 13 hours away from the kids, and so we do a lot of FaceTime, but we did jump in the car and only stopped to fill up with gas, and we're real careful. And I was there when the new baby was born, and for the 2-year-old's birthday, and we've just tried to be really careful that we have not been super strict about hugging and loving within the family, but we have been super careful about quarantining, like before we go, after we get back, and just being super careful like that.
Well, you've got younger grandchildren. Once they get older, they're out and about a bit. And
Yeah.
I find that my kids have not let their kids close to me because they're afraid of their kids giving it to me.
Right.
Rather than me giving anything to them. They're not worried about that. They're worried about their kids giving something to me because, you know, the 2 teenagers, they're still doing their thing, even though they're socially distancing.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the other day I was in the pool with my granddaughter. We had spent a couple of hours playing Marco Polo, and we used a noodle to tag each other so that we wouldn't get too close. And it was the end of the day, and she had been upset about something. And she finally said to me, I need a granny hug. I really need a granny hug. And I thought, what the heck? And I just went over in the pool and I turned my face away and I hugged her. And I thought, you know what? I'd rather get COVID than not hug this kid at this moment when she said I need a granny hug. So,
I think that's where we're all getting, right?
Yeah, I think that's the point we're getting to. Well,
I don't think we expected it to last so long, right? I mean, I think we geared up to buckle down for a couple months, not thinking that 7 months later, we haven't seen the people that mean the most in the world to us. I mean, that's crazy.
It is crazy. And I think a lot of us are going a little stir crazy. There's a lot of stress out there. I mean, just the idea of having a grandchild at a time, spend an overnight, or to spend a day with them. And you can't do that. You just can't. For one of my grandchildren, her other grandparents haven't quarantined at all.
Oh, wow.
So she's particularly careful when she comes near me because she does see them. And it's, you know, it's this constant balancing act that you're doing. All right, I want to ask you, it's often said that the joy of grandparenting is in spoiling the kids and then returning them to their parents. How do you feel about that? Do you think there's something else that's a bigger component of all this? Let's start with Deanne.
I feel like that absolutely, I love to spoil them within reason, but I also feel like there's a family culture, a heritage, a faith in God, and unconditional love. And I think that it doesn't have to be anything real overt. I can remember when my grandma read stories to me and I would say, oh, look at the pretty flower. And she would say, God made the flowers. You know, it was and that was it. That's all she said. And so I just think that there are ways just to introduce them to the family culture and just absolutely 100% unconditional love. That I loved the way Tinker said it, that it's just, I can't even remember, Tinker, what you said, but it was kind of like all sunshine and just within that radius, when they get there, it comes from within. You're just so delighted with them.
That's a beautiful response. Patty, how about you?
Yeah, I only have one grandbaby right now, so I don't know how that'll change the spoiling thing. But I mean, I think Megan said to me 10 times when I was there, oh, Mamo's here. You're getting very spoiled. Don't expect this when she leaves. But more than anything, what I've realized is that it isn't about like spoiling them and giving them back. What it's been for me, and as a brand new grandma, is that I'm able to be present in a way I couldn't be with my own kids because I had 3 kids in 5 years and a crazy life and running around. I can be present with her completely while also knowing that I will return to my very busy life. I'm not trying to do it simultaneously, where Megan is trying to run the house, get the dinner ready, be with Bridget, and I can be present in a way that, and not in a better way or a worse way, but in a different way than mommy can be. So there's a certain presence of a grandparent. My grandparents died, my grandmothers, when I was very young. one died when I was young and one was in dementia. So I didn't really have that. And so this was this is kind of a new way of being in the world. And I'm starting to see it's a lot about being 100% present with them in a way that I couldn't be, no matter how hard I tried. And I was a very present mommy, but in a much different way. Yeah.
Yeah, a much more relaxed way, I think.
Yeah. Much more just, yeah. Okay, let's take a 2-hour walk and pick blackberries instead of, okay, we have 15 minutes and I got to get the stroll. Like, it's just a different, yeah.
Mm.
What about you, Tinker?
Yeah, I exactly was thinking what Patty said. I wrote down before here, it's like less distraction, less expectation, more ability to simply be there. And the power of attention, the power of that kind of attention, loving attention, I think it's like a superpower. And I think grandparents have the opportunity to have that. And I know for me, so many things came between me and the enormous love I had for my children. But I had an extremely complex marriage. I had a complex life. I had a complex relationship with myself. I had a complex relationship with my parents. All sorts of things kind of came between the grandchildren or the children and me. And I mean, we've worked our way through it. It's not there anymore, but it took a lot of work to work my way through it with the children. It has never been there with my grandchildren. I was not prepared for the power of that.
Neither was I.
It makes me well up, when I think my first grandchildren were twin girls whose mother was my stepdaughter, but my daughter, for all intents and purposes. I was the second mother. And the babies were conceived IUV with the eggs from my daughter, who's 10 years younger. So I was like Chinatown. I'm like, I'm your grandmother and your step grandmother. But these little girls, and they were born 2 weeks before my mother died. So I was with my mother when she was dying. I flew back to be for these little babies when they came. Then I had to fly back and be with my mother. And the entire experience was just this one of extraordinary love and pain and joy and past and future. And as Deanne said, history. And I wasn't,
The circle of life.
I had no idea that I would feel the way I did when these little beings came in. I just didn't know the power of it. And I think that's persisted. And then I worried, what if I don't feel that about any of the other grandchildren?
Yeah.
Yes.
What if there's not enough room? What if this heart isn't big enough, And then your heart just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's been very important, again, in this time of COVID, where there's so many ways where we feel like our connection is being tested and diluted and stretched and reformed. And I think grandparents, that love we can give to our grandchildren and that attention we can give to them is just
it's invaluable
priceless.
To them and to us.
Yes.
My grandson walked in my house the other day, my 14-year-old grandson, and he's almost 6 feet tall. He's this big, not big, he's lanky, but he's this sort of grown-up kid now. And he walks in the front door to get something, just pokes his head in and grabs it out. And we're all in the backyard, socially distanced. And he comes out and he said, Grandma, I haven't been in your house in so many months. I forgot the smell of it. I love the smell of Granny's house. And oh my goodness, I thought my heart would explode. Yes. I don't know what my house smells like, but I thought my house would explode because he is that familiar. I've always said to my grandchildren, wherever Grampy and I live, that is your other home.
Yep.
It's always your home. And I'm giving the older ones keys to the house. The younger ones have said, there was no keys to the house yet. We don't hold on to them, Grandma. But the older ones will have keys to the house, so they can come in if they want.
My little Gus, who's just this irrepressible 6-year-old, 6 going on 45, I think, was over here, and they don't come in the house. And he came running to the front door, and I was going to find batteries for the walkie-talkies, which is a whole nother story. But I was upstairs, and I heard him. He's going, "Grab a things!" And my husband is like, "Gus, what is it?" Grandma Dinks. And he said, Gus, she's going to be down in a minute. He said, I need you. And it's it because I'm there.
You bet. You bet. I didn't know my heart could grow as much as it did when I became a grandma. I thought I loved my kids, and I realized that as much as I've ever loved my kids, I think I love my grandchildren more. Maybe I'm just more protective of them because I'm protective of them because I love them and because I know how much my kids love them. And one of the biggest joys I found from this, and tell me if you jump in and tell me if you agree with me, is watching my kids and their spouses turn into parents.
Yes.
And be really good parents. I'm so proud of them.
And asking for parenting advice, which is hilarious, because they, of course, at one point thought you were the worst parent on the planet Earth. And then they turn to you and say, well, what would you do? And I'm like, do you really want to know, or are you just trying to be nice? Because if you really want to know, I'll tell you what I'll do. But to watch them grow into parents and then therefore respect more that you were their parent.
My kids don't ask me for that much parenting advice.
And I
don't blame them.
What about you, Deanne?
I am, as far as parenting advice goes, I'm really careful the way y'all are about not offering it unless it's asked for. And I just try though to be available for the kids when they are, and to talk deeply about anything, so that if we can talk about this, and this, then it's going to be easy to talk about parenting.
Yeah.
But it's super, super fun to watch them be a parent. And I get really tickled to see what part they pick up from us and what they've chosen to do differently. Mm-hmm. Because of course, as parents, there's a bazillion things we would do differently. So it's fun. Not you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A lot of things different I would do.
Yeah.
So many. When I was talking to my granddaughter
starting with
the other
where
day,
they live.
What?
I said starting with where they live. Like, she said there's things you tell them to do different, and I'm like, starting with where they live. Right. I need you to live down the street, right? Like you just have to be quiet.
My daughter lives across the country. My two sons are within 5 minutes of me, but my daughter has lived across the country since she got out of college, and that's a long time ago. And my 8-year-old grandson is there. You know what I've done during COVID with him? Because I'm used to seeing him every couple of months. One of us flies back and forth for a couple of weeks, and I'm used to seeing a lot of him. And so what I did is, he loves to read. So I bought a couple of books that I thought he might like, and I sent him a copy and I bought a copy, and we read together at night.
We do that.
And and it really, and we talk about the books that we're reading together. He reads aloud, I read aloud, and we get to discuss the books. It's, you have to find ways to connect, especially as they get older. It's really, when they're little, it's kind of easier. You goo and God them, they goo and God you. But as they get older, there's got to be things you do together. I have found tapping into their interests is really important. I had this whole list of questions, and what is your advice, your best advice about giving advice to your kids about raising them? And just a sentence. Patty, let's start with you.
Oh, I 100% agree with Dan. I don't give it unless I'm asked. I try to bite my tongue, unless I think it's a dangerous situation. But on the whole, I wait until it's a conversation. I don't know what'll happen in the future. I'm very early in this journey, but I've never walked up to my Megan and said, I would not do that with your child. I haven't, unless I felt it was dangerous, which she has never done anything I think is dangerous. But I wait until I'm asked, and then I try to make it more of a conversation. Because guess what? I did so many things wrong. I don't even know if I have the right advice. For example, like they're having a load of trouble at dinner because she won't sit still because they've never put her in a high chair. And when they finally asked, I was like, will you put her in a high chair and you make her sit there? She can scream through dinner. And they were like, what? And I was like, well, you asked. But until then, I didn't say a word. So I think right now, I think Tinker probably has been through all the stages and might have or you, Antoinette, but right now mine is, when asked, it's a conversation.
Tinker, what do you think?
That doesn't change.
No.
That doesn't change. I have opinions, but I never offer them unless asked for them. And I always double check that they're actually asking for them.
Yep.
And that is leavened or balanced by the fact that I am blown away by how good my children are as parents and how often I tell them that. It's become a tradition now when I still, God bless the post office, mail birthday cards and write messages to my children in the birthday cards. And a part of that, and my and their partners, a big part of that is simply just praising them and telling them what good parents they are and how amazing their children are. And that makes those moments when they ask for help or advice or when they're struggling, kind of gives it validity because it's not couched in disapproval, spoken or unspoken. I mean, I truly feel that way about them. I am so impressed with the parenting, and it is better parenting in the sense of we all did the best we could, but it was a different generation and a different time and different, certainly with the fathers especially. I had an older husband and there were just different expectations of what the relationship would be with the dads. And it is such a partnership now with my kids. And you see the children flourishing, my grandchildren. So yeah, I've certainly given advice. I've certainly done things like paid for a night nurse, and I'm very conscious right now of a lot of this coming from a place of privilege. I just want to say that I am so privileged to be able to say I will pay for a night nurse when my daughter had the twins, and everybody, it was like we were all on LSD. We could not handle what that meant to have twins, baby newborn twins. They came and they were living in the house here for the first 3 months, and it was chaos. And I was still getting over my mom's death and everything. But for example, rather than giving advice about how to handle it, because God knows I didn't know how, and I don't think anyone else did, I was able to offer relief in this other form. And I do that sometimes, yeah.
Which I think is a problem in these particular times. I know that I usually go to Florida a few times a year, and I'll send my son-in-law and my daughter off on mini vacations. I'll say, I'm here for 4 weeks, take 2 weekends and go away and just be as a couple. And they get that time. I haven't been able to do that. These kids have been in the house with their parents for months, and the parents have been in the house with their kids for months. And that buffer that is the grandparents doesn't get to be there that often. But I want to go into something that Deanne said earlier. She talked about passing on family values. When I was growing up, my dad would say to me, you can say anything to me you want. You can disagree with me all you want. You just need to do it respectfully. So the other day, I'm having this long talk with my granddaughter because something was really bothering her. And I said to her, sweetheart, so long as you are polite and reasonable, you go ahead and talk to your parents about things that bother you. You speak up about it, but you have to be polite and you have to be reasonable. And she said, Daddy told me that I could tell him anything I needed to tell him so long as I was polite and reasonable. And I said, that's because that's what I taught your daddy. And she said, someday I'm going to teach that to my kids. And I thought, oh, wow. We all have those moments, I think, when we hear what we put out there come back at us. We may have put it out to our kids and it comes back to us, the good things, and it comes back to us through our grandchildren. And that has to be, have any of you ever had moments like that? Well, Tinker, you're the only one with older grandkids.
I would say yes, but another angle of that is because we are all storytellers, it's the family lore that gets passed down through the generations. And I do feel it's not just talking to my grandchildren the other day because it was Thomas's, my son's birthday, what the experience was when Thomas was born. But then talking about when I was born, what that experience was, because it connected. And even to giving my Iris, my little 3-year-old, who loves dress ups, a pair of gloves and a hanky that still smelled like my grandmother. And I was able to say, this is your
Wow.
great grandmother's
Wow.
gloves.
That's
and
cool.
Great grandmother's hanky. And she used to take me to blah, blah, blah. And so it's,
Wow.
and they love it. They love that. And I feel like it's the whatever that tapestry is that we keep adding to, it is invaluable. Even the cookbook that my husband's mother, Maggie, handwritten cookbook, that she was from the South, from Kentucky, and baked things that I can't even, I can't even dream. I'm not a baker, but my kids and my grandkids, a couple of my granddaughters can bake. And I can say, your great grandmother in our kitchen made these biscuits that you're making. It's just,
really cool.
Oh, it's a miracle. Again, today, when we feel so isolated now, and we can at least pass our stories around, whether it's on a phone or on a screen, it's meaningful.
Be aware, for those, Deanne and Patty, be aware of passing those stories along. I know my parents passed away young. My grandparents passed away young. So I never got to that point where I would ask the questions that you want to ask when all of a sudden, when you're in your 60s, you look back and you go, I wish I had learned this about my dad or this about my mom. And that whole generation is gone now. I have no one to ask. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to pass down whatever family stories I can. For my granddaughter's 14th birthday this year, I said to her, this is a big one. You're going to high school. Tell me something you really want. She said, I'm turning 14. I want these 14 recipes. And she had a list of them. She said, these are some of my favorite foods that you make, Granny, and I want those 14 recipes. Oh. So I bought a beautiful leather binder and did those 14 recipes. And I said to her, every month you can ask for another recipe and we'll put it in the binder. And the binder should hold a couple of hundred recipes. But when they do things like that, you get to realizing exactly what's important to them, what touches them. I don't think on a day-to-day basis, we realize how much influence we can have in our grandkids' lives.
I agree.
When I was in college, there was a book called A Grandparent's Legacy or something. I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically a hardback book that you interviewed your grandparent. And I sat down with a tape recorder and I interviewed my grandpa and got to learn about what it was like growing up on the farm. He was born in 1899. And so I got to, learn about the lean-to and that he snuck out of college one day, skipped classes to go to Ben-Hur because it was at the theater and they had, and it was just, and what books, because books, you just didn't have a library of books and what books they owned. And it was just such an amazing thing. And what's really special now was that it's on tape.
That's
wow.
So jealous.
I am so jealous.
Me too.
So jealous.
Yeah, as a historical author now, I realize that my interest must have been even that far back.
Isn't that true? Wow.
Wow. That is amazing. Well, that's something, in this time when we're stuck at home as grandparents, we could start speaking into a tape recorder, or we could start recording some of our family stories that other people won't know, that we want our children and our grandchildren to know. And it's funny, our children won't be as interested, I think, as our grandchildren until later on.
They get more interested. They get more interested as the grandchildren get older. I just was thinking, those baby books that you get when you have a newborn and you put I think we should have grandparent books. We should all fill them out.
Well, the four of us should get together and create one. I think it'd be fun.
When Megan came home for the first time with Bridget and she was visiting, my mom is still alive. She's amazing. She's 83. And I overheard Megan asking my mom all these questions that I have never asked her. But because it hit Megan that all four generations were sitting outside talking and healthy and there. So Bridget was really young, maybe 6 months. And then Megan's 27 and I'm 55 and my mom's 83. And Megan is asking my mom questions I've never asked my mom.
Yep.
And so I didn't want my mom to quit, but I kind of sidled over to, and there were facts I knew, but not in the way she was telling the story. Yeah, it's really interesting. And you're right. We have to ask because we want the stories and the grandkids are going to want the stories. Yeah.
And we have to put down our stories for them because we're the older generation now, whether we like it or not. I think that grandchildren are, I don't know how it is for men, but I think for women, grandchildren are God's way of making growing older okay. Because if we weren't older, we wouldn't have these little wonderful people in our lives. So go ahead, gravity, do what you're going to do to me. I've got these incredible people in my life that I get to enjoy and I get to watch grow and I get to influence. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think it's much easier to grow older when you have these grandkids.
Patty was saying that there's a filter on Zoom you can use that takes wrinkles away. I think that's grandchildren. I say they're better than Botox. Any picture I have of me with my grandchildren, I literally look 10 years younger than I do normally.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's the joy. I agree with you, Antoinette. I agree with you. It's the gift that keeps on giving and that I never expected would be mine. Yeah.
I don't think you can define. My brothers were awaiting their first grandchildren, and I said to each of them, because they're 8 years younger than I am, and I said to each of them when they were awaiting their first grandchildren, you have no idea of what this baby is going to add to your life. You have no idea of how your heart's going to grow. You can. And one of my brothers said, "Yeah, we'll spoil the kid and give it back." Well, they are so attached to their grandbabies. It is such fun to watch, and I don't know anybody who isn't.
Now I know why people move for their grandbabies. Now I know.
Yeah, I get it.
People say my parents moved here for the kids. I'm like, what? And now I'm like, oh, yeah.
I even enjoy how my husband interacts with the grandbabies. It's so different from when our babies were little because, we were both just had so much responsibility. But I just love watching him FaceTime with the grandbaby. It's just so sweet. So sweet.
My husband is my second husband, and he skipped the kids part and went directly to the grandkids. And I always tell him, you have no idea how lucky you are.
Yeah.
But he wanted me to tell this story. So I'm going to tell this story, which is that when the twins were about 3 months old, and because I had to be back with my mom when they were born, I told my husband, you have got to go and hold those newborns. Just go. It's like geese. They have to imprint, and they're going to imprint on you. So he took his motorcycle up to Ventura and held them both, this look of stark terror on his face, and they imprinted on him, I'm convinced. But they were about 3 months old, and so I took them. He was sitting on our big bed, and I had to do something, and I said, okay, here. And I just dumped them both on the bed with him, these two little plump little beings, and left. And he was like, I came back and he had propped them up and he was taking pictures of them looking at the little stained glass windows, and it was done. It was a done deal. He is their grandfather. His name is Cameron. They call him Campa, all of them, which I love. But it is that seeing them with and they don't know from who came when and how anybody arrives. He's just their grandfather, and seeing that, I agree, Deanne, it's just this, there's so much joy in this. There's so much joy in seeing how, and as Antoinette said, and we're all saying, the heart just gets bigger, and boy, do we need that right now in this world. The love just gets bigger and bigger.
Very reassuring. It's they're so reassuring. Is there something, and I want to ask Deanne this first, is there something your grandchild or grandchildren have come to expect from you? Something special?
Since I think it's such a great question, and I loved what you said about reading a book with your grandchild, you know, and finding their interest. And since we're 13 hours away, it has been, I wanted to make a real effort to have a relationship, since the other grandparents are like right down the road. And so he sees the other grandparents all the time. But even at 2, he loves to read, absolutely loves to read, or to be read to. And so on his birthday, one of the birthday gifts we gave him was we invited him to go on an alphabet adventure with Pops and Mama D. And what that was we were going to mail him a book that started with each corresponding letter of the alphabet. So 2 weeks from his birthday, in the mail, which I told my daughter, it has his name on it. He opens that mail. And it has a book that starts with A. And then 2 weeks later, a book that starts with B. And then C. And then when you get to Z, because there's 26 letters and you're getting them every 2 weeks, that's right when he'll be turning 3.
Oh, wonderful.
So those are, you know, so
That's brilliant.
What a great idea.
When they get old enough to, you know, either fly without mom and dad, or when mom and dad are willing to bring them, with being on the lake, I would love to keep them, you know, at grandma's for a couple of weeks. But until then, I loved what Antoinette said about finding what each of their interests are and tapping into them. And fortunately, we were on the same wavelength, Antoinette, and just, you know, reading is one that is easy to tap into for long distance. We'll see what's to come with the other ones.
You're going to, as that baby gets older, you're going to find yourself flying back and forth much more often. Much more often. You won't be able to resist it. There's a pull to that.
Well, and one of the things we did, since he can't read, and even though we inscribed each book and says A is for alligator, when we gave him alligator shoes, and then Love, Pops, and Mama D, I ordered page of stickers that were just little bitty 1-by-1 stickers of me and my husband, and I peeled them off and I put them on that page so that every time he opens the book he sees our picture, so he remembers,
so great,
that it was from
Smart.
Wow,
really sweet. Stealing ideas, stealing like a thief.
You bet. Okay, Patty, anything your grandchild has come to expect from you?
Well, I don't know how much she expects at 22 months, but every time she gets on the phone, she wants to read a book. So we have 3 books we read together. I own one and she owns one, so we can do it together. Jamberry, Runaway Bunny, and Goodnight Moon. And we read them together. And the other thing she has come to expect, and it's hilarious, is that when she calls me, she also gets to see our dog. So first she says, "Mamo, mamo, mamo," and holds up the book she wants to read. And then she starts going, "Woof, woof, 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 woof." And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, not till you say dog. And it's so funny because she's not growing up Southern. They're right now in the Pacific Northwest. And she goes, "Dog." Dog. But yeah, I mean, it's funny that they start to associate you, and I want them to, with something fun. Okay, good. Mama's on the phone, which means I get to see the dog and read a book. So yeah, I'm sure things will shift, but right now that's what I've got.
What about you, Tinker?
That's a good question. I would say laughter. I joke with them a lot, and I love seeing their humor develop, and we have that. Yeah. We have that humor. Attention, what we talked about before, a particular kind of attention. And I am convinced that I invented avocado toast, because years ago with the girls, the twins, I would make avocado toast with sourdough toast and squished avocado on top of it, way before it was on any menus. So I would say avocado toast is my third thing, because it's passed along and now it's not a thing anymore, but I hold on to that as mine.
There were things that I expected from my grandma that I've tried to do as well. And one of them was because they were long distance, and whenever they came to visit, she brought each of us something in her suitcase. So the minute she walked in the door, we were just right behind her to see what was in Nanny's suitcase. And it didn't have to be anything big. Just this last time when I saw our 2-year-old, we just got like a $2 little finger puppets of the Paw Patrol characters, and I would just go, Chase is on the case, and you would just, and he would just love it. And so I did that. And then the avocado toast made me think that my grandma made fantastic cinnamon toast. And
oh yeah, my mom did that. Yeah,
went to Nanny's house.
I want some now.
I know, so comforting.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I had a grandma who came from Italy, and she would in the morning make me a big cup of coffee milk. Big mug of coffee milk. I was a little kid, and we would get up, we'd sit alone in her kitchen, and she would make me 2 slices of toast, and she would teach me to dunk them. And to this day, I love to dunk my toast. And then I'd go back to my grandma in New York, who was also Italian, but she was much more cosmopolitan. And I would go to dunk my toast and I'd stay with her, and she'd go, "Oh, you've been with that woman again." Which,
you've been with the other grandma.
you've been with that woman. So that leads to another question. And first I want to tell you what my grandkids expect from me. They expect baked goods. They expect that my freezer is always overflowing with homemade cookies and cakes and stuff. So last night, my son and my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter came over to swim. And it was probably around 7:30 at night. So we were already in the house. We were making our dinner, which in the heat was cottage cheese and fruit. Yeah. I didn't make anything special. So I walk into the kitchen and they're all yelling from the pool. They're yelling for me. And I lean out the window and I say, "What do you need?" And my daughter-in-law goes, "What treats do you have?"
Oh,
and I thought, oh my God. And I said, "I have nothing." She said, "Oh no, you have something in the freezer." And I said, "No, it's been hot. I have nothing. I didn't." She said, "You always have something." And I said, "I have Oreos." And she said, "That's not a grandma treat." And I found some chocolate covered graham crackers I had made in the freezer. And I found some banana bread in the freezer.
Of course.
And made a hot fudge sundae and sent it all outside. But they have come to expect that when they come to grandma's house, there is something baked for them.
That's hilarious.
By the way, Antoinette, I have come to expect that too when we go to your writers group conventions.
Yes.
Well, we have to be careful what traditions we start, because they keep expecting them, and then we're like, wah wah. Sorry, didn't make anything. Yeah.
Well, speaking of the other grandparents, how much contact do you have with your grandchildren's other grandparents? Do you have much?
Oh boy, I have such a big tent, blended families. I have come to the conclusion, a couple of times I've had to wrestle with grandma jealousy, definitely. But I don't think you can have a big enough tent, and I don't think you can have enough grandparents. And that's what I tell my grandkids, and especially grandmothers. My ex-husband had 4 wives, and 3 of them are still around. We're like the first, second, and third wives club, or fourth wife. I don't even know what we are. But all 3 of us out here, his current wife, and then then me, and then the one before me, we all have a relationship with each other via the grandchildren. And I tell the grandchildren, you can't have enough grandmas. You just can't. I had one, and that wasn't enough. And
I had none. I get it. Yeah.
Yes. And I also do believe, though, that it's going to sound very Victorian, but it's earned. Being the grandparent is earned. And in the sense that I didn't create anybody else's relationship with the grandchildren. That's their business. But as they earned their place, as I had to earn mine in this connectivity, I I just embrace it. Because what else are we going to do? And there was a time when people had 10 kids and they had kids and they had the aunties and the whatever, and there was this huge safety net. And we don't have that anymore, but we've got blended families. And I've got a lot of blended family combinations all over with the grandparents. And I just think you have to embrace it.
Yep.
You do. You do. We've started, what we started when the first grandkids came was, if there was a big something that they wanted, something special, you could afford it, like a bike or something special, but we would call each other and we'd go in on it together.
Yes.
So that what they got for Christmas or what they got from their birthday was from all their grandparents, and nobody was standing there shining more than the other grandparents.
Great idea.
I like that.
And it really worked. It really worked, and it took away a lot of that push me pull you between the grandparents. Well, I'm going to get them this, or you're going to see them first. They may give them the bike that I'm getting them. You know, this way we know it each other, and we do it together. And the kids seem to be much more relaxed with it.
I like that.
I love that. When the kids were dating and getting engaged and all that, and especially once they got married, I made a concerted effort to get to know their parents, because I knew someday that they would be grandparents. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted a really good relationship, because I knew we were going to have to share them on the holidays and all of that. And, you know, our son's wife was no problem, because they were high school sweethearts. So she's been in my home since she was 16. So I've known her parents long time. But the other sets of parents we didn't know as well. And so it's really, really important. And we also coordinate on gifts. Like, well, I was going to get them this off their list. You know, what are you going to get them? So that we didn't
good idea.
Or those kinds of things. And then at family gatherings, it's super fun and comfortable when both sides of the family all get together. Then because we have a relationship that's not based on the grandparents, but based on something that we built long before that.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. And it makes it so much easier for your kids and so much easier for your grandkids not to feel like they're being pushed and pulled between families. It becomes one family that way. I think it's really, really important. Well, I don't know about you, but I can't wait to hug my grandchildren up close and personal, and to hug my kids up close and personal. Every time I talk to
you guys, I want to hug all of you.
Yeah, same here. And I want to. I say to my grandkids, I say to my kids all the time when I get off the phone with them, please go over to this grandchild or that grandchild, give them a big hug from Granny and Grampy, and pinch their cheeks. And my daughter said yesterday, I will give him a hug, but I can't get away with pinching his cheeks, you know? And, you know, you just say these silly things to break the mood, but stay in touch. You know, I think the big thing that comes out of this is staying in touch as best we can with our kids, with our grandkids, and realizing that this is going to be over. And in between, take the time to start thinking about what you want your grandkids to know about your family, don't you think? Yeah. Really important. Anybody want to add anything? I have a last question. What did you anticipate being a grandparent would be? And how was actually being a grandparent different? And Deanne, let's start with you.
I had heard everybody's always like, oh, you have no idea. Oh, you have no idea. So and they say that before your first baby too. And I did have no idea. And so I knew that it was going to be something super special. What I didn't anticipate was that the love that I have for them would be reciprocated the way it is. I did not expect every time I FaceTime with the 2-year-old, him to just get this huge smile on his face. Mm-hmm. And really love Mama D and Pops the way he does. And I think that was the biggest shock, was I knew I would love them, but I didn't realize how much they would love me. And that's been amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It really is. Patty, what about you?
I don't know. I didn't have a lot of expectations going in. And I think one of the interesting things is that my grandbaby is my daughter's baby. I have two sons. And I wonder how it'll be different because it'll be their baby, but their wives' babies, right? I'm sure I will love them just as much and just as intensely. But I didn't have a lot of expectations, but I did. I felt exactly the way I thought I'd feel. I mean, from the minute she told me she was pregnant, I felt the same way I feel right now, which is as bonded and as close to my daughter as I am to this little baby, that even though I don't get to see it all the time, her all the time, it's a pretty profound connection. Especially since right now there are 4 generations of us, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're all firstborn daughters. My mother, then me, then my daughter, then Bridget. So we're all firstborns and we're all daughters. So I think I felt and saw that connection early on. So it's not that surprising yet. I'm sure there are surprises to come.
Plan the portrait post COVID.
We need to.
Yeah, plan the portrait.
Plan
What
the
about
book.
you, Tinker?
Plan the book. Woof.
That'll be an interesting one. Woof. The way the 4th generation all the way down to Bridget.
Wow. Talk about
Good Lord.
stories. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So different. So different.
I love it. I secretly was worried that I would be the exception to the grandmother, grandchild love affair that everyone or many people had talked about. And I was Patty's age when the girls came, and full on in a lot of things. And I just wasn't sure. I just hoped that I would feel that thing, but I wasn't sure that I would. So so my grandmother, I had that with my grandmother, but my mom wasn't that close to my kids. So I was working with 2 different storylines myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when it happened, it knocked me off my feet when I saw those little faces, and I just felt this enormous current of love. And I still have it. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to have this experience. And I agree with you, Antoinette. It has made the process of aging kind of seamless in the sense that I have this other aspect that's growing at the same time as I'm growing, they're growing. So
yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift to aging. I promised each one of my grandchildren the first time I held them, I quietly whispered to them that I promised to try to give them 1 million smiles. And I know I'll probably never get to that, but I have found that keeping that promise has kept me thoroughly engaged and let me have so much more fun, because I still work full time, but it's led to me having so much more fun than I thought, than I ordinarily would have had. Yeah. And it's led to me being sillier and more spontaneous and ridiculous sometimes. I mean, when the first 2 started to toddle, I went out and bought a plastic kiddie pool and filled it with those balls that you can jump into, and I left it in my living room until they got tired of it. You do these crazy things, but I was sitting at the edge of the pool one day in my clothes at the end of work. I had walked over to the pool and I still had a little bit more to do. And 2 of my grandkids challenged me to jump in the pool with my clothes on. And I did. You do these things with your grandkids that you wouldn't expect that you would ever do. And maintaining that spontaneity is, and I never thought my heart could grow as big as it's grown. Never thought it. Never thought I could love the way I love them. Well, ladies, I hope you all stay safe. And any last words to anybody out there who's feeling kind of disconnected from their families? Deanne, why don't we start with you?
I'll just persevere and FaceTime and maybe write letters, cards, you take advantage of snail mail, and do pictures, revert back to maybe the way it was back in the day and how we communicated. And because letter writing is a completely different kind of relationship. So if you're a long distance, give it a try. See what comes of it.
You bet. How about you, Patty?
I don't know if I have any advice, except I do know that there's some cold comfort maybe in knowing that we're all feeling it, that it's not, I think it's harder when you feel like you're the only one, and the lonesomeness is very universal right now. And I'm going to get kind of choked up. It's really hard, especially for people who love connection and seeing each other and squeezing and hugging and rolling around laughing. I think there's cold comfort, but comfort in knowing that we're in this together. So I don't have any real advice how to get past it. I just know that sometimes I think, well, because there were times when I was sick or whatever, that you feel very alone in your lonesomeness, but this is a together alone kind of thing.
I agree with you. Tinker?
I would say come up with different ways of telling people that you love them. Come up with new ways of expressing what it is you feel for people, and then make sure you do that with yourself as well. Include yourself in that experience, because we have to be there for ourselves. It sounds like so trite, but we have to appreciate ourselves and love ourselves and be proud of the way we're getting through this, as Patty said. And it's easy to forget that that's also important.
Yeah. And I write your stories down, write them, dictate them. You can go online and buy yourself a little machine, and you can talk them into a machine, but take the time that you're spending quietly to put your family stories down, because they're going to be very important to your grandkids someday. Really important. Well, ladies, I love you all, and I'm going to miss seeing you this fall. I miss it very, very much. And I want to thank you so much for being with us today. And please spread the word that you're on this panel, because we want everybody to connect. And I think that what we're doing here is trying to give that connectivity to people. And stay safe. Stay healthy. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Bye, everyone.